Chapter 101, in the East Blue, starting with the sun-breathing technique from the sign-in system. In the East Blue, on a small, unknown island. A skinny black-haired boy sat on a rock at the island's shore, resting his chin on his hand as he stared at the vast ocean in front of him. His young face was full of worries far beyond his age. Growl. The boy looked down and touched his stomach, sighing deeply. Sigh. It's been 2 months since I came to this pirate world. I thought I would dominate the seas, but I can't even fill my stomach. What a pathetic life for a transmigrator like me. Sigh. The boy sighed again, unable to help himself. If only I could get a system or something. Ron. A voice sounded from behind him. He turned to look. A freckled, blonde-haired boy was waving at him. Dad's back with food. Ron's eyes lit up, and he immediately jumped off the rock. Coming. He ran over to the blonde boy's side. Ron, what were you doing over there? Nothing much. By the way, Mars, did Dad bring back meat this time? Ron asked expectantly. Maybe, Mars replied uncertainly. Great. Let's hurry. The two of them ran into the woods, arriving at a small cabin. By the time they got there, a group of children had already gathered. They gazed at the food placed on the ground with glowing eyes, some even unable to resist reaching for it. But midway, a middle-aged woman swatted their hands away. No, you have to wait for everyone to arrive before we eat. But I'm so hungry, one of the children complained. Rules are rules, the woman responded firmly. A burly man with a beard sat nearby, holding a jug of wine. He laughed heartily as he watched the scene unfold. Mary, you're as strict as ever. The woman shot him a sharp look, and the man immediately stopped laughing, clearing his throat. Then he sat cross-legged and looked at the eager children. All right, is everyone here? Yes, all the children except Ron shouted in unison. Good. Then come up in order and get your food. Everyone gets the same, no fighting. Yes, Dad. Ron received 2 loaves of bread and a small piece of meat from Mary, thanking her before retreating to sit under a tree. The bread was hard and tasteless, the meat tough with a faint, unpleasant smell, and barely salted. Despite this, Ron devoured it eagerly. The man watched the children as they ate hungrily, taking swigs from his jug and laughing. Don't rush, there's more tomorrow. That night, when Ron got up to relieve himself, he overheard a conversation between the man and woman inside the cabin. Harris, did you go help those bandits again? There was a brief silence. Didn't you swear you'd never be a bandit again? Why did you? The woman's voice trembled with emotion. Don't cry. I'm not a bandit, I just helped out a bit. I swear I didn't kill anyone, Harris said, scratching his head. I had no choice. Pirates showed up recently. The tavern I worked for got robbed, and they couldn't pay me this month. I can't let these kids starve. So I promise this is the last time. Damn pirates. Didn't the Navy say they'd help us? When are they coming? Humph, the Navy won't come. They're in bed with the pirates. They don't care about us. When will this nightmare end? Ron silently returned to his bed, lying down and staring at the ceiling. Harris used to be a bandit, but he stopped. All the kids here were orphans that he took in. Mary, despite being strict, never complained about taking care of so many children. She looked after them all diligently. They were good people. Ron raised his hand and looked at his open palm, his gaze becoming resolute. I have to help them. Even without a system. Even if I'm just an 8-year-old kid. I can't keep thinking I'm superior just because I'm a transmigrator, as if I don't belong in this world. Since I'm here, I have to fully integrate into this world. Ron's eyes filled with determination. Ding. Detecting the host's strong will. Activating the strongest sign-in system. Ron froze. Hi. Then he reacted, jumping up from his bed in shock. Hi. 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 Mars, who was sleeping nearby, woke up, rubbing his eyes and groggily sitting up. Ron, what's wrong? A nightmare. And no, nothing. Ron's voice trembled. Oh, okay. Good night. Mars fell back asleep. Ron pinched his cheek, confirming the pain. He wasn't dreaming. System. Yes. It was real. Ron was overwhelmed with excitement. Suppressing his emotions, he asked in his mind. System, what can you do? The host can sign in at different eligible locations to receive rewards. Can I sign in here? Detecting. Host is located on Moses Island, East Blue. You can sign in. Overjoyed, Ron immediately said. Sign in. Sign in complete. Reward received, physical enhancement, vitality plus 10. Reward received, sun breathing technique. The moment the system spoke, a warm current surged through Ron's body. His previously frail and weak form was instantly filled with strength. At the same time, the full knowledge of the sun breathing technique appeared in his mind, and his breathing began to adjust automatically. Ron's vitality boiled within him, like fiery dragons coursing through his body, strengthening his bones and muscles. But suddenly, the process was interrupted. Ron opened his eyes, exhaled heavily, and breathed rapidly, his face pale. Did I fail? What went wrong? Host's body is still too weak. Your vitality isn't strong enough to fully support the sun-breathing technique. Ron understood immediately. I see. So I need to focus on training and strengthening my body first. Yes. Ron clenched his fists, his resolve stronger than ever. He wanted to become stronger. Only by becoming stronger could he avoid hunger and eat better food. Only by becoming stronger could he help Harris and Mary. And only by becoming stronger could he survive in this brutal pirate world. Early the next morning, the sky was still dim. Ron got up, and the children around him were still asleep. Mary, who was busy with breakfast in the house, heard the noise, turned her head, and was surprised to see Ron. Little Ron? Why are you up so early today? I woke up and couldn't fall back asleep. Good morning, Aunt Mary. Is there anything I can help with? Ron asked. Thank you for the offer, but there's nothing much to help with right now. Okay, then I'll go for a walk. Don't go too far. If you miss breakfast, I won't make any extra for you. Got it. Ron left the house. The sky was faintly white. The cool morning breeze carried a hint of the sea's salty smell, effectively dispelling his drowsiness. Ron walked into the woods and did some warm-up exercises. All right. After warming up, he started jogging through the forest trail. Harris, carrying firewood back, saw him running and was a bit surprised. Ron. Good morning, Dad, Ron said as he ran past him. Harris scratched his head, looking at Ron's back. What's up with this kid? Ron ran 10 laps in a row, jogging for about 2 hours before finally stopping, dripping with sweat, but his young face was full of joy. This strengthening of my physique has really improved my stamina. I probably couldn't have even run 1 lap before, and now I can run 10 without stopping. Clenching his fists, Ron thought to himself, even though my body is still that of an 8-year-old child, my stamina and strength are probably better than before I transmigrated. System, show me my current attributes. Yes. A panel, visible only to Ron, appeared in front of his eyes. Host, Ron. Age, 8 years. Vitality points, 18. Mastery of sun-breathing technique, 0%, unmastered. Vitality points of 18. System, what do these vitality points mean? What's the use? Does a higher vitality point value mean someone is stronger? Ron asked curiously. Host, the vitality points only represent the strength of one's physique and vitality. Strength cannot be determined by vitality points alone. Oh. I see, it's like a person's basic stats. Important, but not directly representing strength. Ron immediately understood. So, with 18 vitality points, what level would that be in this world? Host, a normal 8-year-old boy with adequate nutrition would have around 10 vitality points. A normal adult male would have around 30 vitality points. That strong man you encountered before had 50 vitality points. Dad is indeed stronger than ordinary people, Ron nodded. By the way, you said before that my physique is weak and my vitality is insufficient to use the sun-breathing technique. What level of vitality points do I need? At least 30 vitality points are required. 30 points, huh? Ron nodded slightly, his goal now clear. The first step to becoming stronger was to train his body and raise his vitality points to 30. After training a bit longer, Ron's stomach started to rumble. Only then did he realize it was late and quickly ran back. When he returned to the mountain hut, breakfast time was long over. As Mary said, she didn't save him any food. Sigh, food is also a problem, Ron said as he rubbed his belly and left the house. Ron. Mars's voice made Ron look up. Where did you go this morning? I've been looking for you everywhere. Mars asked, looking at him. Before Ron could answer, Mars pulled out half a piece of black bread and handed it to him. Here you go. Hi. Ron was stunned. You haven't eaten, right? I saved it just for you. Eat it. The freckle-faced, yellow-haired boy grinned at him, revealing a missing tooth. Just remember to pay me back next time. Mars. Ron was touched. He took the bread and, without hesitation, devoured it in 2 or 3 bites. Mars looked at him and asked, where are we going to play today? Are we going to the beach again? Ron shook his head. I'm going to train. Train. Mars tilted his head. Yeah, do you want to join me? At noon, under the scorching sun. In the forest. 73, 74, 75. A black-haired boy was doing push-ups, sweating profusely. The yellow-haired boy beside him was lying spread-eagle on the grass, his head drenched in sweat, too tired to even lift his hands. Ron, is this training? I'm exhausted. I feel like my throat is on fire, Mars gasped, his mouth wide open. Will this really make us as strong as Dad? 79, 80, 81. Hey, Ron, are you even listening to me? 85, 86, 97, 98, 99, 100. Ron's arms gave way, and he collapsed on the ground, breathing heavily. After a long while, he rolled over and lay on his back, staring up. Through the gaps in the leaves, sunlight flickered down. Ron softly said, Mars. Mars, his eyes closed, was already drifting to sleep from the exhaustion. What do you want to do in the future? The future? I don't know, I've never thought about it. This island is small, but the sea is vast. Ron raised his hand, as if trying to grasp the flickering sunlight through the leaves. I've already decided. I will become strong, leave this small island, and travel every corner of this vast ocean, taste all kinds of food, drink all kinds of wine, and see all the sights. Beside him, Mars's soft snores indicated he had fallen asleep. Ron glanced at him, then looked back up. A bright smile spread across his sweat-streaked face. I won't become a pirate, and I won't become a marine either. I will become a traveler of this world. A gust of wind blew by. The branches swayed, and leaves flew into the air. When Mars woke up, it was already evening, and the sky was filled with a red sunset. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up. Ron was holding a thick wooden stick, swinging it up and down repeatedly, practicing vertical chops. His black hair was soaked with sweat, and it was unclear how long he had been training. Mars stared at him blankly. Ron, noticing Mars from the corner of his eye, stopped, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and smiled at him. You're awake. Yeah, have you been training the whole time since I fell asleep? Mars asked, still a bit dazed. Yeah, pretty much. Hearing this, Mars looked at Ron with a hint of admiration, as if he was seeing his friend in a new light. I found some fruit earlier. Consider it repayment for the bread from this morning. As Ron spoke, he slicked back his wet hair to keep it from obstructing his view. Mars finally noticed a pile of fruit sitting next to him. He couldn't help but swallow, and as if on cue, his stomach growled. Immediately, he grabbed an apple and started eating it in big bites, speaking between mouthfuls. Did you pick all this fruit, Ron? Yeah. Ron continued swinging his stick. Where did you find it? The nearby trees should have been picked clean by now. Mars asked, curious. I went a bit deeper into the forest. Mars's hand froze mid-bite, and he looked at Ron. That's the area where Dad and Aunt Mary told us not to go, right? They said there are dangerous beasts there. Ron, you went in. Ron, still swinging the stick with his back to Mars, didn't reply. If Dad and Aunt Mary find out. Mars's hand, holding the apple, dropped. Just don't tell them. But. Relax, I won't go back. It was a one-time thing. All right then. Over the next few days, Ron woke up early each morning to train in the forest. He would return briefly for breakfast, then head out with Mars, only to come back drenched in sweat by evening. After a night's rest, he'd be back at it the next morning with renewed energy. This routine continued for about 10 days. One morning, Harris called Ron aside for a chat. After hearing about his desire to get stronger, Harris didn't say much and left him to it. That morning, after finishing his basic training, including 200 push UPS, Ron checked his stats. Ron. H. 8. Vitality points, 21. Breath of the Sun Mastery, 0%, unmastered. 16 days of intense training, and I've only increased my vitality by 3 points. Ron was slightly frustrated with the slow progress. But in truth, for an 8-year-old still in the early stages of physical development, this speed was quite fast. My training intensity is sufficient. Although I can't fully utilize the breath of the sun yet, just practicing a portion of it helps me recover from muscle fatigue and damage overnight. But the real problem is my body's limitations. Without proper nutrition, bread and fruit alone can't meet my needs. I need meat. Lots of meat. Ron pondered to himself. But where could he find meat? The mountains were too dangerous for him at his current strength. Facing wild animals would be too risky. The sea, also wasn't an option. It seemed like the river was his best bet. Ron thought quietly. He needed to quickly craft a fishing tool. Should he make a fishing rod or a net? A net seemed like a better choice, using a rod would take too long. As for materials, maybe the junkyard would have something useful. Ron. A voice snapped Ron out of his thoughts. He turned around. A tall, rugged man with a beard and a large sack on his back stood by the road. Uncle Brian, Ron called in surprise. Brian was Harris's best friend, a fisherman from the town. What are you doing here? Is your dad home? Brian asked as he walked over. Dad's gone to town, he's not home, Ron replied, immediately catching the smell of fish as Brian approached. Uncle Brian, did you need something from Dad? Haha, not really. I just had a good catch on this trip and came by to give him a fish, Brian said with a laugh. Hearing this, Ron's eyes lit up. He walked up to Brian and looked up at him, asking, Uncle Brian, do you have any old fishing nets you don't need? Old fishing nets? Brian was taken aback by the sudden question. After thinking for a moment, he replied, I've got some damaged ones in the storage shed. What do you need them for? Can I have them? Ron asked expectantly. Sure, I don't mind, but what are you going to do with broken nets? Fishing. Fishing? You won't catch anything with those old nets, but if you want them, you can come by and pick them up later. Thank you, Uncle Brian. And please don't mention this to Dad. All right. After obtaining the discarded fishing nets from Uncle Brian's fish shop, Ron dashed to a pond deep within the forest. He found a long wooden stick and used wire to tie the usable parts of the net around it, creating a simple fishing tool. While this thing can't be used for sea fishing, it's perfect for this small river, Ron said, pleased with himself. He immediately started testing it in the river. Although it wasn't the most efficient tool, it worked well enough. As long as he had good aim and quick reflexes, he could catch the leisurely swimming fish. Before long, Ron had caught 5 or 6 fish. This should solve my meat problem, he thought, eating the grilled fish with a satisfied expression. With a steady supply of fish, Ron's training became even more intense. The combination of extreme exercise and ample nutrition began to show significant results. His bones started to grow, and his muscles developed quickly. In just 1 month, he had grown 10 centimeters, now taller than Mars, who was a year older than him. This routine continued for another month. One morning, before dawn, Ron dressed quickly, leaped out of his window, and gracefully landed on the grass. He headed for the forest to continue his training. 51, 52, 53. He counted, doing one-handed push-ups. Even after passing 50, he looked relaxed, his movements still smooth and controlled. After finishing 150 push-ups, Ron sat cross-legged on the grass, his body radiating heat. At that moment, the voice echoed in his mind. Reminder, host's vitality has reached 30. Already at 30. Ron thought, surprised as he opened his status panel. Host, Ron H. 8. Vitality points, 30. Breath of the Sun Mastery, 0%, unmastered. Ron closed his eyes and mentally reviewed the entire Breath of the Sun technique. His breathing began to change. Exhale. It felt like he was expelling all the air in his body. Inhale. The breath seemed endless, instantly flooding him with vitality. It became a blazing inferno within, igniting his spirit and inner strength. His entire body seemed to radiate heat from within as the energy surged through his muscles, veins, and every fiber of his being. Ugh! Ron grunted, frowning from the intense pressure, but he endured. He continued to circulate the Breath of the Sun technique, and thick white steam began to rise from his body. Anyone nearby would have felt the intense heat radiating from him. When Ron finally opened his eyes, the world around him appeared clearer than ever before, and his body felt lighter and more energized. So this is the power of the Breath of the Sun, he muttered, looking at his hands. For the first time since starting his training, Ron felt like he could truly control his strength. Host, Ron. H. 8. Vitality points, 30. Breath of the Sun Mastery, 1%. Summer passed, autumn arrived, and winter followed. Aunt Mary was once again stressed about making winter clothes for the children, constantly sighing in frustration. Meanwhile, Harris started leaving earlier in the morning and coming back later at night. The children's beloved Uncle Brian also visited less frequently as the seasons changed. With winter's arrival, the island faced more frequent raids from pirates and bandits, making life difficult for everyone in town. One day, under a gloomy sky, Ron stood in a clearing in the forest, bracing against the biting cold wind. Wearing only thin clothing, he held a wooden stick in his hand, his eyes closed. Whoosh! He took a deep breath and suddenly opened his eyes, stepping forward. Breath of the Sun, first form, Dance of the Flame. With the stick as a blade, Ron swung it in a slashing motion. The wooden stick instantly ignited, and an arc of flames erupted around him. In mere moments, the flames vanished, leaving a ring of charred grass that spiraled outward, the largest circle spanning 3 meters in radius. Whew, whew! Ron panted heavily, supporting himself on his knees. His face was pale, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. I finally did it, he exclaimed. It had been 5 months since he first began mastering the Breath of the Sun technique. During these 5 months, he had trained relentlessly, waking up at 4 a.m. every day and returning home by dusk. Every waking moment, whether walking, eating, or even sleeping, he was constantly circulating the Breath of the Sun. Now, after months of extreme training, Ron had finally succeeded in unleashing the first form of the Breath of the Sun, Dance of the Flame. He resumed the Breath of the Sun technique and, within seconds, recovered all of his strength. Standing tall, Ron looked at the charred marks on the ground and nodded in satisfaction. Finally, I'm seeing some real results. System, show me my current status. Affirmative. Host, Ron. Age, 8. Vitality points, 87. Breath of the Sun Mastery, 7%. In just half a year since activating the system, Ron had undergone a tremendous transformation. Ron found that combining the sun-breathing technique with extreme training made his vitality growth even more impressive than expected. Before mastering the technique, 2 months of intense training only increased his vitality by 12 points. But after mastering the technique, he gained 57 vitality points in just 5 months. He could feel that the growth of his body's vitality was getting harder the further he progressed. It looks like it's going to snow, Ron said, glancing up at the dark, cloudy sky. I'd better head back early today, or Aunt Mary will give me another lecture. She's been worrying about me a lot these past few months. As Ron made his way back to the mountain house, he moved through the forest swiftly and nimbly, like a monkey. Soon, he could see the house from a distance. At that moment, snowflakes began to fall. Hi? Uncle Brian. Ron spotted Brian rushing toward the mountain house. He knocked loudly on the door, which was soon opened. Brian urgently said something to Aunt Mary, whose face turned pale with fear as she covered her mouth in shock. Then, they both hurried off toward the town. A sense of foreboding rose in Ron's chest. Could something have happened to Old Man Harris? Without hesitation, he followed them. He sprinted along the forest path, overtaking Mary and Brian, and reached the town ahead of them. As soon as he arrived, a gunshot rang out. That way! Ron quickly rushed over, squeezing through the crowd of onlookers. The sight before him made his eyes widen. An elderly man lay on the ground, clutching his wounded arm in pain. Harris and several other men glared furiously at a group of about 20 pirates. The pirate captain, who wore a pirate hat, held a smoking gun. Ha, stupid old man! All I asked for was some money, and you had to make things difficult, sneered the pirate captain, his face twisted with arrogance. He glanced at Harris and the others. What's this? You think you can stand up to me? He aimed his still smoking gun at Harris. This here is Samoti, a pirate with a bounty of 1.5 million berries. I'd think carefully if I were you, sneered a skinny pirate beside the captain. If you piss him off, who knows what might happen to this little island? Harris clenched his fists, his body trembling with rage. He wanted nothing more than to beat the pirates into the ground, but his rational mind held him back. Samoti smirked and fired a shot at the ground in front of Harris. Humph, you're just a bunch of cowards. How boring. All right, boys, tear down that tavern and take everything money, booze, all of it. Ha 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 ha. Hee hee, I've been waiting for this. I'm going in first. A group of pirates, eager for action, stormed into the tavern, smashing and looting as they pleased. No, no. You can take everything, but please, don't destroy my tavern, cried the elderly owner, who lay bleeding on the ground. Desperately, he crawled toward the tavern's door, dragging his injured arm behind him. He grabbed one of the pirate's ankles, but the pirate kicked him away. Stupid old man, get lost. If you want to die, don't do it near me. Seeing this, Harris could no longer hold back his anger. He lunged forward, catching the pirate captain off guard and landing a powerful punch on his face. Get off this island! Harris roared. His punch sent Samoti, the infamous pirate with a 1.5 million berry bounty, flying several meters. Mary and Brian arrived just in time to witness the scene, their faces filled with shock. Harris! Mary cried out. What a punch, Ron thought to himself in admiration. The strength, speed, and power of Harris's punch were all impressive. Although Harris's vitality points were only 50, his strength surpassed that. The pirate, Samoti, was sent flying 5 or 6 meters before crashing to the ground. His crew finally reacted. Boss! You dared to hit the boss! Kill them all! Don't let any of them escape! The pirates drew their weapons and charged at Harris and the others. The men behind Harris, who had been itching for a fight, grabbed hammers and other tools and ran forward to meet them. With a fight about to break out, the crowd quickly backed away. Mary, get back! I'm going to help Harris! Brian shouted, drawing his fish knife as he rushed into the fray. He had been eager to take down some pirates himself. Brian! Mary's face was full of worry, but there was nothing she could do. She had followed Brian here, hoping the situation wouldn't escalate, but things didn't turn out that way after all. At that moment, Mary felt a tug on her clothes. She turned around and saw a boy with short black hair, cute and innocent looking, smiling at her from behind. Mary's eyes widened. Ron! It's me, Aunt Mary. What are you doing here? This place is dangerous. Go back immediately. Mary said anxiously. Don't worry, Aunt Mary, I'm actually pretty strong. Ron smiled at her. Though his words were true, To Mary, it seemed like a joke. After all, standing in front of her was just an 8-year-old boy who barely came up to her waist, his small frame not even as thick as the arms of some of these pirates. Stop fooling around. This place is dangerous. Get back right now. Mary said, sternly. Ron wanted to say more, but when he saw her anxious expression, he held his tongue. He nodded, all right, I understand. I'll head back now. Hearing this, Mary finally breathed a little easier. Good kids, listen. Now hurry back. Ron nodded and jogged down the street. Only then did Mary turn her focus back to the chaotic battle in the street. Harris blocked a pirate's iron club with his arm, his expression unchanging, and punched the pirate in the face, smashing his head so hard it caved in. Got him. A pirate leaped into the air, gripping his sword in both hands, and slashed down at him. But midair, he was intercepted by Brian with his fish-slicing knife. The two friends exchanged glances, silently trusting each other as they focused on the enemies before them, watching each other's backs. Damn it! How dare you ambush me? Samodi rubbed his swollen face and glared at Harris with murderous intent. He raised his gun and aimed at Harris. Die! Mary's pupils shrank as she saw the scene unfold. Harris caught sight of the danger from the corner of his eye and tried to dodge, but it was too late. Bang! Even with Harris's best effort to avoid it, the bullet grazed his arm, tearing his skin. He gripped his wound tightly, but blood still flowed from it, dripping onto the ground. Seizing the opportunity, a nearby pirate struck his leg with an iron rod, causing Harris to cry out in pain as he collapsed to one knee. Missed, hi! Samodi sneered as he aimed his gun at Harris's head. This time, I'll take your life. Harris! Harris, big brother! Brian and the others tried to rush to Harris's aid, but the pirates kept them locked in combat. Kakik, I'll use your death to send a message to the people of this island. Let them see what happens when they defy Samodi. Samodi grinned wickedly, tightening his grip on the trigger. No, don't. Mary, filled with despair, was in tears. Time to die. Bang. A loud noise echoed, but it wasn't the sound of gunfire. It was more like something heavy hitting the ground. Dad, I've come to save you. A young boy's voice rang out in the middle of the fight. That voice. Brian and Harris looked up sharply. What they saw shocked them. Samodi, the fearsome pirate worth 1.5 million berries, his head completely buried in the ground. Sitting on top of his buried skull was a small boy with black hair and black eyes. Brian and Harris stared at the boy, their mouths hanging open, completely dumbfounded. Their jaws practically hit the floor. What? Ron. Mary, who had been sobbing, looked at the small figure in utter disbelief. How was Ron standing there? Captain. Boss. The pirates, looking at their leader Samodi's head buried in the ground, were enraged. Damn kid! Get off the boss's head! A burly, shirtless pirate with a meaty face and wielding a large sword charged at Ron. Watch out! Mary screamed in panic. But what happened next left everyone, including Mary, speechless. The small boy lightly hopped to avoid the pirate's sword slash. In midair, he spun gracefully, delivering a powerful, swift kick to the pirate's neck. The burly pirate, his vision instantly black, heard a cracking sound from his neck. Then, this massive pirate, easily over 2 meters tall and weighing more than 200 kilograms, was sent spinning through the air before crashing to the ground, unconscious and foaming at the mouth. The entire street fell silent. The pirates, the townspeople watching, and even Harris, Brian, and Aunt Mary stood there, eyes wide as saucers. What? Can you imagine the scene of an adorable 8-year-old boy kicking a 200-kilogram vicious pirate into the air with one foot? Aunt Mary, I told you, I'm pretty strong, Ron said with a smile toward the stunned Mary. At this moment, Mary was at a complete loss for words, her mind blank. Nearby, several pirates brandished their swords and charged at Ron. Harris was just about to rush over to help. But before he could take a few steps. Bang, bang, bang! The pirates surrounding Ron were all sent flying. Ron was left holding one of the pirates by his collar. Spare me, the pirate begged, drenched in sweat. But Ron smashed his fist into the pirate's face, leaving a deep imprint. Monster, a nearby pirate, holding his weapon, backed away in terror, trying to distance himself from the boy who still stood on their leader's head. Brian came up beside Harris, staring at the small figure. He couldn't help but ask, Harris, what's going on with Ron? He's only 8 years old, right? Harris smiled bitterly. I have no idea either. All I know is that he's been training his body for the past 6 months. An 8-year-old training for 6 months can get this strong. Brian's mouth hung open, full of disbelief. Harris didn't know what to say. He, too, found it hard to comprehend. Harris, now's our chance. Let's wipe out these pirates once and for all, said a middle-aged man excitedly. The villagers had been suffering under the pirates for too long. Before Harris could respond, Someone shouted, "Drive these pirates off our island!" In an instant, the crowd surged with excitement. "Yeah! Charge!" The onlookers shouted in anger as they rushed towards the now hopeless pirates. They grabbed pots, pans, hose, and sticks, smashing them down on the pirates' heads. The remaining dozen pirates were instantly beaten like drowning rats, kneeling and begging for mercy. Ron stepped back from the battlefield, and a hand rested on his head. He turned to see Harris smiling down at him. "Ron, thank you for saving me," Harris said. "You little brat! When did you get so strong? You're really something!" Brian exclaimed, his face leaning in. "I've just been training, and before I knew it..." Ron feigned innocence. "Harris! Ron!" Aunt Mary pushed through the crowd and rushed over, wrapping her arms around both of them, tears streaming down her face. "Don't make me worry like that, you two idiots!" "Aunt Mary! Mary, don't do this, everyone's watching," Harris said, blushing, as he awkwardly scratched his head with his uninjured arm. "Bring some rope. Tie them up," someone shouted after a while. The pirates were all bound, with Samodi leading the pack. His face was so swollen it had doubled in size, making him unrecognizable. When he regained consciousness, he was still trying to sound tough. "Don't think this is over. You're all dead. I work for Lord Arlong. You've signed your death warrants by messing with him." Ron's eyes flickered at the mention of Arlong. Arlong? Could it be? Arlong? Could it really be that Arlong pirates? Someone asked, fear lacing their voice. "No way. Ka-chuk-shuk. Yes, it's that Arlong pirates." Samodi let out a sinister laugh. "Lord Arlong is a big name with a 20 million berry bounty. You've messed with him, and now you're..." Sizzle. A stream of water hit him right in the head. "What's this? Ah! It burns! My eyes, my eyes!" Samodi screamed in agony. "The pepper water gun I made with Mars, how does it taste?" Ron said, holding up his water gun, his childlike voice echoing in everyone's ears. The crowd stared at him, dumbfounded. Ron aimed again and sprayed several more pirates. "Biubia biubio! Ah! My eyes! It's burning, it's burning, it's burning! Ah! Stop it! Ah!" The onlookers watched the pirates suffer, some feeling a shiver down their spines. "Is this child a demon?" a well-dressed man wearing glasses suddenly shouted from the crowd. "Stop it!" Everyone turned to look at him, including Ron. The entire area fell silent. The spectacled man pushed his way through, appearing furious as he yelled at Ron. "Do you even understand the situation? The people you've offended are none other than the Arlong pirates, the most dangerous crew in the East Blue. Have you thought about the consequences? Our town, even our entire island, could be destroyed because of your reckless actions. You're going to get us all killed, you foolish brat." The crowd suddenly fell silent. "What now? If we offend the Arlong pirates, what are we going to do? We're doomed. I don't want to die. It's all their fault. They didn't even think about the consequences. I recognize that guy. Wasn't he a bandit before?" "Bandit?" The crowd immediately turned their anger towards Ron and Harris, isolating them. "Now, we just need to drive them out of our island. Only then will we avoid offending the Arlong pirates and be able to live in peace here again." A man wearing gold-rimmed glasses urged the crowd. "Yeah, it was them who caused all the trouble. Get rid of them, and everything will be fine. They're the ones who made this mess. Why should we suffer? Get off our island. Leave. Leave." The crowd chanted in unison, their voices growing louder and more organized. Harris and the others clenched their fists, feeling an overwhelming sense of helplessness. "Everyone!" The old tavern owner tried to speak up for them, but his voice was drowned out. "Haha, see that, kid? This is what happens when you cross us." Samodi, with his red, swollen eyes, laughed wildly. "Bayou!" Another stream of pepper spray hit Samodi's already wounded face, causing him to scream in agony as he writhed on the ground. "Let's just say it was all my doing," Ron said, turning his back to the crowd. Silence fell once more as everyone's attention turned to his small figure. Ron looked at the man who had been inciting the crowd. "If you hand me over, that should be enough, right? Ron?" Harris and Mary exclaimed in panic. "Dad, Mary," Ron smiled at them, "don't worry. I'm not going to die. I've been wanting to leave this island and see the outside world anyway. This is the perfect chance." He said this, his gaze fixed on the man, narrowing his eyes slightly. "Is it okay if I go alone?" he asked. The man, intimidated by Ron's gaze, stammered, I think that should be okay. Ron." Mary's eyes welled with tears, but Harris held her back. "Mary, let's trust him," Harris said through gritted teeth. He could see the situation clearly. The pirates, having been released by the crowd, approached Ron, ropes in hand, and tightly bound him. "Thank you for taking care of me these past few months. I won't forget you." If I get the chance, I'll come back to visit, Ron said, his back still turned to the crowd. Harris's eyes reddened, and he clenched his fists. Mary was sobbing uncontrollably. Little Ron. Brian, a burly man, stood with his arm across his face, trying to hold back his tears. You think you'll come back? You won't get the chance. Samoti growled, his eyes still burning with pain, his vision blurred. Boss, that's a wooden post. The kid isn't over there. What? Damn it. I can't see with my eyes burning like this. Boss, we've got him tied up. Good. Get him on the ship. Once my eyes are better, I'm going to enjoy watching his suffering. Yes. As the pirates led Ron away, Samoti issued a final threat to the townspeople, I'll let you off this time, but if you dare do this again, it won't be just me. The Arlong Pirates officers will come next time. Boss, the kid's over there. You're talking to a wall. What? After the pirates, along with Ron, left, Mary buried her face in Harris's chest, weeping uncontrollably. The entire town was silent, with only her sobs breaking the stillness. Snow began to fall heavier. At the shoreline, waves crashed against the rocks, and the pirate ship docked there. Ron, tightly bound, was thrown onto the deck. Soon after, Samoti and the other pirates boarded the ship. Set sail. Snowflakes swirled in the air as the pirate ship slowly sailed away from the island. On the pirate ship. Ouch, damn it. Be gentler. Samoti cursed as his men applied medicine to his injured face. Ron, still bound, sat on the deck, gazing out at the vast sea as the island behind him grew smaller and smaller. Suddenly, the system's voice echoed in his mind. Beep, detected departure from the initial island, global map unlocked. A virtual screen appeared before his eyes, invisible to everyone else. It displayed a map of the entire pirate world, with a red dot indicating his current position, along with the names of all the islands and seas. The island he had just left, Moses Island, was marked, as well as the nearest island to the northwest, located 63 kilometers away, called the Malay Archipelago. In addition, Ron noticed some familiar names. For example, Windmill Village in the East Blue, Shitmotsuki Village, and Kokoyashi Village. The entire world's navigation map. Ron's eyes sparkled with excitement. This treasure that every navigator dreamed of was now within his mind. Ron dodged swiftly, as a sharp whip lashed past him, hitting the deck hard. Still trying to dodge, Samoti, seated in a chair, held the whip and looked down at Ron with a cruel grin on his disfigured face. Hold him down. I want to see how he keeps dodging now. Two pirates, who had been previously beaten by Ron, sneered as they approached him. Wait, Ron said. Oh, now you're begging for mercy? It's too late. Samoti laughed wickedly. Hold him down. I just have one question. Do you really know Arlong? Ron asked, looking at him. Samoti paused for a moment, then an ugly, triumphant smile spread across his disfigured face. Ha ha ha. Of course I don't know Arlong. Those fools actually believe I'm one of his crew. So, you're not with Arlong's crew, Ron frowned slightly. If I were with Arlong, would I be robbing such a poor island? People will do anything for their peace, ha ha ha. Just the mention of a name, and they won't dare fight back, Samoti sneered at Ron. Do you see it now? This is the power of fear. This is what it means to be a pirate. Ron nodded slightly. You're right about that. The world is indeed a chaotic blend of good and evil. Finished talking? Time to die, brat. For what you did to me, I'll repay you 100-fold. First, I'll break your limbs. Attack. Samoti waved his hand, and two pirates charged at Ron, grinning viciously. Oh? 100-fold repayment? Can you really do that? Ron took a deep breath, activating his full power. With a sudden burst of strength, the ropes binding him snapped instantly. The two pirates were knocked back by his small but powerful fists, sent flying across the deck. What? Samoti's mouth dropped open, his cigar falling unnoticed as he stared in horror. Ron bent down and picked up a long sword, nearly his height, slinging it over his shoulder. He looked up at Samoti, who was now filled with fear. Looks like you can't back up your threats, Ron said with a grin. Damned brat! All of you, attack! I refuse to believe he can take us all on. Samoti's face twisted with fury. Ha! The pirates around Ron grabbed their weapons and charged at him. Moments later, Ron sat on top of a pile of more than 20 unconscious pirates, holding the blood-stained sword. Want to continue? Samoti's weapon clattered to the deck as he fell to his knees, trembling in fear at the sight of Ron. Demon! Hey now, calling me a demon doesn't really suit me, does it? Ron smiled. I'm actually considered the most handsome and cute guy among the boys in our mountain cabin. He jumped down from the pile of pirates and walked over to Samoti, resting the bloodied sword on his shoulder. The pirate shivered and began sweating profusely. From now on, this ship belongs to me. Wherever I say to go, you go. Shitmotsuki, does that sound good to you? Everything is as you command, Lord Ron. Good. Now, take me to the treasure room. Eh? Why yes. Right away. In the treasure room, Ron looked at the piles of treasure chests and clicked his tongue in appreciation. These pirates may be weak, but they've still managed to collect quite a bit of treasure. But now, it all belongs to me. System. At your command. Scan all the treasure and store it in the system space. Understood. An invisible beam of light scanned over the room full of treasure. A few seconds later, the system's voice chimed in, scan complete. The treasure vanished before Ron's eyes, now safely stored in the system's space. Ron looked at the system's treasure storage, nodding in satisfaction. The system's storage space was indeed convenient. When Ron walked out of the treasure room empty-handed, Shitmotsuki glanced inside. Seeing the completely empty room, not even a single coin remaining, Shitmotsuki's legs gave out as he collapsed in shock. Impossible, all that treasure, gone. What did he do? Shitmotsuki knelt, his face blank with despair. My money, my 10 years of savings, all gone. On this day. The weather was calm. On the deck, Ron sat cross-legged in the captain's seat, sipping juice through a straw. Nearby, a formerly fierce and intimidating pirate, now submissive, stood by nervously, not daring to breathe too loudly. Where's my meat? Is it not ready yet? Ron asked. The pirate trembled all over and immediately responded, I'll go hurry them. Not long after, 2 pirates came over, carrying a large platter filled with various steaks and meat legs, still steaming. Ron's eyes lit up, and he immediately began eating voraciously. The pirates standing nearby watched, gulping down their saliva. After Ron had eaten his fill, he glanced at his current stats. Host, Ron. H. 8. Vitality, 88. Mastery of sun breathing, 7%. After a few battles, my vitality has increased a bit. Ron thought to himself. He felt that this increase in vitality was related to his practice of sun breathing. During real combat, the sun breathing technique seemed to maximize the circulation of his vitality, strengthening his body in the process. Vitality is the foundation of physical strength. The further you go, the harder it is to improve. Many people hit a bottleneck and can never break through again. This bottleneck is what determines a person's limit. Only by breaking through this limit can one continue to improve and become a true powerhouse. There are very few people in the world who can break their limits on their own. In the Navy's training camps, unique extreme training methods help gifted cadets break through their limits, producing a generation of strong fighters. But Ron could feel it. The sun-breathing technique he had mastered far surpassed the Navy's training methods. Hey, Ron! Big bro, which direction are we heading next? One pirate asked in a trembling voice. It was a bearded, fierce-looking pirate, but his voice shook as he addressed the adorable 8-year-old boy as Big Bro. If anyone else saw this, they'd surely think they were dreaming. Ron snapped back to reality and glanced at the system map. The nearby islands include Mosen Island, Bargus Island, and Nia Island. Ron noticed an island with a town name that caught his interest. Shitmotsuki Village, could it be the same Shitmotsuki Village where Zoro is from? The island is 127 kilometers southeast. Ron looked at the pirate and said in a childish voice, head southeast. 3 days later. Ron disembarked onto the island with a sack of food on his back. Behind him was a sunken pirate ship. 2 days later. A black-haired boy carrying a backpack arrived at Shitmotsuki Village. So this is Shitmotsuki Village. Ding. Current location, Shitmotsuki Village. Sign in available. Would you like to sign in? Sign in, Ron answered without hesitation. Sign in successful. Reward, Vitality plus 10. Reward, one of the 21 great great swords Raikiri. Ron instantly felt a warm current surge through his body, flooding his muscles with a sensation so intense it felt like they were being torn apart. This pain soon faded, replaced by a feeling of comfort and lightness, as though his whole body brimmed with strength. The improvement in his vitality affected everything: strength, speed, stamina, recovery ability, all of it increased with the rise of his base physicality. But what thrilled Ron even more than the boost in vitality was his other reward. A great sword. Ron looked at the long sword in his hand, which was almost as tall as he was, and his face lit up with excitement. The 21 great swords, there were only 21 in existence. Some had been lost to history, and fewer than 10 still existed in the world of pirates. While they weren't as legendary as the supreme great swords, they were still rare treasures, worth more than life itself to some swordsmen. Ron examined the long sword in his hand. It looked like a traditional Japanese katana, quite heavy, with a white scabbard adorned with golden thunder patterns, a magnificent weapon. Ron grasped the cool hilt and gently drew the sword. Zzz. The sound of the sword being drawn was like a thunderclap, the blade covered with lightning patterns, its gleaming edge surrounded by a faint electric glow that made it look incredibly sharp. Ron swung the sword. The speed was so fast it was like a bolt of lightning, gone in an instant. The air even smelled scorched, as if lightning had sliced through. Great sword, Ron said, satisfied, sheathing it again. He wanted to hang it at his waist, but after trying, he realized he wasn't tall enough to do so, so he had to carry it on his back. As for why he didn't store it in the system space, there was only one reason. Because carrying it just looked cooler. Convenience didn't matter. What mattered was style. Just as Ron finished strapping the sword to his back and was about to head to the sword dojo, a voice called out from behind him. Hey, you! Can I take a look at that sword? Ron turned around. A small boy with a messy head of green hair stood on the path, staring intently at the sword on Ron's back with a burning desire in his eyes. This guy! When Ron saw the familiar green hair, a name instantly popped into his head. Hey, I'm talking to you. Let me see your sword for a bit, the green-haired boy repeated. What's your name? Ron asked. Me? I'm Roronozoro. Remember that name, because one day it's gonna shake the whole world. The green-haired boy crossed his arms, looking proud and full of himself. Ron hadn't anticipated that the first person he'd meet upon arriving here would be the very one he had come to find. But then again, this cocky kid's personality was so different from the green-haired swordsman he would one day become. Hey, what's your name? I don't think I've seen you before. Are you from outside? Little Zoro asked, his attitude as arrogant as ever. My name's Ron. I'm a traveler, Ron replied with a smile. Pfft. Little Zoro covered his mouth, stifling a laugh. A traveler? Ha ha ha. You look about my age, and you're calling yourself a traveler? Ha ha ha. He laughed so hard, tears came to his eyes. Ron didn't mind. After all, with the way he looked right now, claiming to be a traveler probably did seem a bit funny. When little Zoro finally stopped laughing and wiped the tears from his eyes, he asked, if you're a traveler, then why are you carrying a sword? I'm a traveler, so it's only reasonable to carry a sword for protection, right? Ron said with a smile. That makes sense, Zoro said, scratching his head. So, does that mean your sword is a real one? Can I take a look at it? Ron shook his head. No. Why not? Because it's a hassle to put it back on after I take it off. Zoro was dumbfounded. That was his reason? Taking off a sword and putting it back on was quick. What kind of excuse was that? A few seconds later, Zoro snapped out of his confusion, only to realize that Ron was already walking away. He hurried to catch up. You're just making excuses so I can't touch it, right? You stingy jerk. Nope, Ron replied. But the truth was, yes. He didn't want this kid touching his sword, Raikiri, just in case it got into his hands and he couldn't get it back. After all, there was a certain law of cause and effect known as the protagonist's aura. Fine. I don't need to touch your sword. My swords will definitely be better than yours in the future and I'll have more. Zoro declared, resting his hands behind his head. I'm gonna use 2 swords, no, 3 swords. I'll use 3 swords and become the world's greatest swordsman. Ron glanced at him. Have you learned swordsmanship? No, not yet. Why? Zoro seemed confused. But I've heard there's a dojo over there. I plan to go challenge it soon. Ron looked in the direction Zoro pointed. The dojo, hi, over there. He smiled at Zoro. Thanks for showing me the way. Let's meet again at that dojo. Hi? You're going now? It's little Zoro didn't get to finish his sentence as he saw Ron dash off toward the dojo, his speed astonishing. Scratching his head, Zoro muttered, what a weird guy. Later that night, snow began to fall. The dojo was still brightly lit. A short, blue-haired girl in a white training uniform was repeatedly practicing vertical strikes with a bamboo sword. Kuina, it's late. Let's stop for today, Koshiro said as he entered the dojo. Father, let me finish 100 more strikes, and then I'll rest. You go ahead, Kuina replied without turning around. All right, but don't stay up too late, Koshiro said as he left. Got it, Kuina responded. She continued, counting each strike. 98, 99, 100. Breathing heavily, Kuina finally lowered her bamboo sword, her arms too tired to lift. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It's late, the dojo is closed. Please come back tomorrow, Kuina called out. The knocking stopped. Who would come to the dojo this late, she wondered. Curious, Kuina opened the door and peeked outside. Snow was falling heavily, and in the yard, a black-haired boy sat cross-legged, his eyes closed, a white-sheathed sword resting on his knees. Snow had already started to accumulate on his head and body. No way, is he planning to sit there all night? Kuina's eyes widened. She stepped outside and approached the boy. You're going to freeze to death like this. I won't die, the boy responded without lifting his head or opening his eyes. Why not? Kuina asked, intrigued. The boy raised his head, opened his eyes, and smiled at her. Because I don't want to die. Kuina didn't understand his answer. Anyone would freeze to death if they slept outside in the snow. What did his will to live have to do with it? Sighing, she grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the dojo. I don't know why you're here, but I can't just let you freeze to death at my family's dojo. You can sleep inside for the night. Ron didn't resist and followed her into the dojo. Kuina, what's going on? Koshiro came out to see what the commotion was and saw Kuina pulling Ron into the dojo. Father, this guy was planning to sleep outside. I brought him in, Kuina explained. Sleeping outside in this weather? Koshiro looked at Ron in surprise. What was wrong with kids these days? Father, can this boy stay at the dojo tonight? Kuina asked. Before Koshiro could respond, his eyes caught sight of the white-sheathed sword in Ron's hand. His eyes widened in shock. A white sheath, with golden lightning patterns. Is that Father? Kuina asked, confused by her father's reaction. Meanwhile, Ron stepped forward, holding the sword. He looked at Koshiro and spoke words that left Kuina astonished. The sword's name is Raikiri. I would like to challenge the dojo master with this sword. Raikiri. That sword hasn't been seen in centuries. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime, Koshiro said, his eyes filled with admiration. Looking at Ron, he asked, did you come here to challenge me? To be precise, I've come to learn. I want you to teach me how to cut through anything and become a master swordsman, Ron said earnestly. Behind him, Kuina's eyes widened at his words. Ha ha ha, becoming a master swordsman is no easy task. It takes a long time of dedicated practice, Koshiro said with a laugh, stroking his smooth chin. He loved seeing young people pursue the path of the sword. That was why he had opened this dojo. Since you've come to challenge me, I'll accept. But before you fight me, you'll need to face her, my daughter, Kuina. Don't underestimate her just because she's a girl. Her skill is already on par with adults, Koshiro said, smiling as he pointed to Kuina. The dark, cold night was accompanied by falling snow. Inside the brightly lit dojo, Ron stood opposite Kuina, holding a bamboo sword. Koshiro stood nearby with his arms crossed, his gaze mostly focused on Ron. A boy who seemed younger than Kuina, carrying a famous sword, one of the 21 great swords, Raikiri, naturally caught his attention. Kuina, gripping her sword hilt, looked at Ron's stance and asked, is this your first time using a bamboo sword? Yeah, I've handled swords before, but this is the first time with a bamboo one, Ron replied. Without another word, Kuina's eyes sharpened. Come at me, she said. Ron wasted no time, charging towards her at a lightning speed. So fast. Kuina and Koshiro were both surprised. Ron reached Kuina and swung his bamboo sword downwards in an arc toward her head. Clack! Kuina quickly raised her bamboo sword to block, but the force numbed her hands, causing her to take 2 steps back. Such strength! Kuina was shocked. Koshiro, too, widened his eyes. What speed and power! His stance and sword technique are basic, but he can still exert this much strength? What kind of training has this boy gone through to develop such a physique? Before Kuina could stabilize herself, Ron swung again. Clack! Kuina's bamboo sword flew out of her hands. Just 2 hits, and I've lost, she muttered, stunned, falling to the ground in disbelief. Ron called her name a few times, but she didn't respond. Even after he and Koshiro entered the inner room, Kuina remained in a daze. After some time passed, a hand rested on her shoulder, accompanied by Koshiro's gentle voice. Kuina. Her eyes began to regain their brightness. Father. Father. She whispered, tears welling up and streaming from her eyes. Why? Why have I worked so hard in my sword training, yet I can't get stronger? Kuina, you are already strong. Many adults can't even match you in swordsmanship. But I still lost. I couldn't even withstand 2 strikes. This isn't the strength I want. All my hard training, what was it for? Koshiro placed a hand on her head and said seriously, Kuina, you are strong. I can promise you that all your efforts up to now have been worth it. None of it was in vain. But I still lost. That's because your opponent, Ron, is an exception, Koshiro said, his tone changing slightly. His strength is on a different level from yours. Kuina raised her tear-filled eyes toward him. A different level? Koshiro nodded gravely. Yes. After crossing swords with him, I can clearly feel his power. If your level is 10, his is 50. Even I would have to be serious facing his attacks. Kuina's eyes widened in disbelief. She knew well her father's strength. Could that boy, Ron, really make her father get serious? So, losing to him isn't something to be ashamed of. In fact, the fact that you blocked his first strike is impressive, Koshiro said, patting her shoulder. Father. I've decided to let him stay at the dojo. I'll personally teach him swordsmanship. He will become even stronger. Kojiro stood up. Make him your goal to surpass, Kuina. If you do that, I have no doubt that you'll grow even stronger. Hearing this, Kuina wiped her tears and her gaze turned determined. Father, I understand. I must defeat him. Only then can I become the world's greatest swordsman. Where is he now? I want to challenge him again. Her eyes were filled with fighting spirit. You can challenge him tomorrow. It's already late today, and I've let him sleep in the storehouse, Kojiro said with a chuckle. The next morning, as dawn broke, Kuina grabbed 2 bamboo swords and kicked open the storehouse door. Ron, I challenge you again. The storehouse was empty, with only neatly folded blankets in sight. Where is he? After searching the dojo, she finally heard a noise from the forest behind the dojo. She found Ron doing 3-finger push UPS. 343. 344. 345. In the snowy forest, the black-haired boy, shirtless, was drenched in sweat. His body was steaming from the heat, and the snow around him had melted into water. Hey, Kuina called. Ron turned his head, glanced at her, then continued his workout. Don't scare me by calling out like that, Ron said casually. You don't seem startled at all. Kuina thought, watching him. After a while, she asked, how long have you been here? Since last night, don't you remember? Ron replied. No, I mean how long have you been working out here? Oh, that. Been here about 2 hours now, Ron said, sitting down after finishing his push UPS. With a loud thud, Kuina's bamboo sword dropped to the ground. She stared blankly at the black-haired boy sitting in the snow, his upper body bare, muscles slightly flexed, yet with incredibly defined lines. At this moment, Kuina somewhat understood why, even though Ron looked younger than her, his strength was so overwhelming. Ron, on the other hand, looked at Kuina, his face full of confusion. Did you need something from me? Kuina snapped back to reality, remembering her purpose, and quickly bent down to pick up 2 bamboo swords. With a firm gaze, she said to Ron, I'm here to challenge you. Ron scratched his head. Didn't we fight yesterday? That was because I was careless. Today, I'll show my real strength. Oh, alright then. A moment later, Kuina's bamboo sword was sent flying. She looked at her trembling hands, gritted her teeth hard, and stared at Ron, saying, tomorrow, I'll come again, dot. I'm always ready, Ron replied with a smile, shouldering his bamboo sword. Kuina shot him a fierce look and turned to leave. She had only taken a few steps when Ron's voice echoed behind her. Your speed is decent, but your strength is lacking. At this rate, you won't be able to defeat me. Kuina stopped in her tracks, her fists clenching slightly, biting her lower lip. The weakness in strength was her sore spot. She had cursed countless times that she was born a girl, as women's strength was naturally weaker than men's. And this difference only became more pronounced as time went on. That's why her father, Kojiro, bluntly told her that as a woman, she would never become the world's greatest swordsman. I know. I know my weakness is my lack of strength. Kuina shouted, her back still turned to Ron. No matter how hard I train, my strength can't match that of you boys. If I could, I would want to be a boy too. Her voice was full of frustration. Ron paused for a moment, then understood. It seems you've misunderstood me. I'm not mocking you. I was asking if you'd like me to teach you a method to increase your strength. Kuina's body trembled. A way to increase strength. She turned her head toward Ron. Can you really help me improve my strength? Ron nodded. I think so. Later in the day, in the forest behind the dojo, Ron handed Kuina a grilled fish. Eat this. Will eating it increase my strength? Kuina asked with suspicion. It's part of the process. Kuina quickly devoured the grilled fish, surprised by how delicious it tasted. Full? Ron asked, watching her. Kuina nodded. Good, said Ron, then began guiding her. Now close your eyes and do exactly as I say. Kuina followed his instructions and closed her eyes. From now on, you need to adjust your breathing to my rhythm, Ron's voice echoed in her ears. Take a deep breath and completely exhale all the air from your lungs. What Ron was teaching Kuina now was a simplified version of the sun breathing technique. He had discovered that after eating a full meal and using the breathing method, one could quickly absorb the energy from food. While it didn't directly increase vitality, it was highly effective in boosting strength. How do you feel? Ron asked. Kuina slowly opened her eyes. The feeling of fullness in her stomach had disappeared, replaced by a sense of hunger. She clenched her fists. It seemed like she had indeed gained some strength. A flicker of excitement flashed in her eyes. But to make sure it wasn't just a feeling, she suddenly stood up and ran off, saying, I'll go test it out. Hey, Ron called after her, watching as she disappeared into the distance. He shook his head and smiled. A while later, Kuina returned, looking disappointed. It seems like it was just an illusion. I still can't lift that stone weight with one hand. Ron, still swinging his bamboo sword, said, gaining strength isn't that fast. Try again in 10 days. For the next few days, it seemed Kuina was spurred on by Ron. When Ron arrived at the training ground at 4 am, Kuina was already there, holding her bamboo sword. The two would spar first, and then they would each focus on their own training, not bothering one another. After the sun rose and they ate breakfast at the dojo, they would both practice swordsmanship under Koshiro's guidance. This included footwork, body positioning, gripping the sword, drawing the sword, and various strikes. In the afternoon, Ron and Koshiro would spar with real swords, while Kuina watched. The more she watched, the more pressured she felt, and she would often leave after a short while to practice on her own. In the winter, the dojo felt especially quiet. The children who came to learn swordsmanship stayed home because of the cold, reluctant to visit the dojo. Occasionally, some familiar villagers would stop by for a chat. Usually, it was just Koshiro, Kuina, and now Ron. It wouldn't be until spring when the place would become lively again. Half a month quickly passed. Inside the dojo, Kuina, dressed in a white training uniform with short blue hair, looked at the 60-kilogram stone dumbbell in front of her and took a deep breath. Then she raised her hand, grasped it, and exerted her strength. This time, she finally managed to lift it with one hand. Yes. Kuina felt happier than ever at that moment. But when she saw Ron next to her easily lifting the 200-kilogram stone dumbbell, her joy instantly disappeared. Noticing her gaze, Ron turned his head and smiled at her while still holding the massive dumbbell that was bigger than his entire body. Kuina couldn't help but mutter under her breath. Monster. At dinner that evening. As usual, there were only Ron, Kuina, and Koshiro at the table. Ron and Kuina were both busy stuffing food into their mouths. Koshiro looked at them and smiled wryly. I'm not surprised that Ron is like this, but Kuina, why are you doing it too? You weren't like this before. Even if you're trying to catch up to Ron, you don't have to copy everything he does. He seemed worried. At this rate, would they even have enough money for food? It was clear that they would need to recruit more students in the spring. That night, in the dojo, Kuina was practicing her slashing technique. Ron, wearing his white training uniform, sat cross-legged nearby, with the famous sword, Raikiri, resting on his knees. He closed his eyes and, following the sword meditation technique taught by Koshiro, cleared his mind. At the same time, he unconsciously began using the sun-breathing technique. Gradually, his mid-length black hair started to move despite the lack of wind, and Raikiri trembled slightly on his knees. This state lasted for quite some time. Suddenly, Ron's eyes snapped open, and he drew his sword in a flash. A slash accompanied by lightning and fire briefly illuminated the air. With this slash, Ron felt his internal energy surge, as if he had broken through a bottleneck. Host, Ron. Age, 8 years old. Vitality points, 100. Sun breathing technique mastery, 9%. After spending a month in Shitmotsuki town, Ron's vitality finally reached 100, up from 98. Ron, what was that just now? Kuina asked, dumbfounded as she looked at Ron and the Raikiri in his hand. That was the 4th stage. Koshiro walked in, his gaze fixed on Ron with an expression of shock. I had high hopes for you, but I didn't expect you to reach this level so quickly. Sensei, what is the 4th stage? Ron asked curiously. The 4th stage is the first step toward becoming a true swordsman, Kuina said, her expression complicated. Indeed, Koshiro nodded and raised 3 fingers. To reach the level of a sword master, there are 3 stages you must go through. The 4th stage is the first. When you strike with your sword, an aura or phenomenon will appear along the blade, like the flames in your slash just now. As for the lightning, I believe that comes from the sword you're holding. Koshiro explained to Ron. The ability to generate an aura or energy wave with a slash is one of the signs of entering the 4th stage. And what about the 2nd and 3rd stages? Ron asked, his interest piqued. The 2nd stage is called the will stage, a level beyond the 4th stage. The aura in your strikes becomes more vivid and controlled. Like this. Koshiro picked up a bamboo sword and slashed the air. A strike formed into a blue dragon, which soared forward, smashing a nearby wooden rack into several pieces. After unleashing this strike, Koshiro looked at Ron and smiled. There are many swordsmen across the seas, but only a few can reach this level. The 4th stage, the will stage, and the 3rd, is the iron cutting stage. The iron cutting stage. Ron's eyes widened slightly. Yes. Koshiro nodded. When you can cut through steel with a wooden stick, you've reached the iron cutting stage. A swordsman who reaches the iron cutting stage can be considered a true sword master. After hearing this, Ron looked down at Raikiri in his hand, lost in thought. That night, Ron couldn't sleep. He lay there with his eyes open, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the stages Koshiro had mentioned. The flames from that slash weren't a sign that I've reached the 4th stage. I've seen similar flames when I used flame dance before, so it's probably a result of me unconsciously using the sun-breathing technique. Koshiro must have mistaken it for my sword aura, but in truth, I haven't reached the 4th stage yet. Ron thought to himself. But thanks to this misunderstanding, I now have a clearer understanding of the path to becoming a sword master. Coming to this dojo was definitely the right choice. Now my goal is clear. A glimmer of determination flashed in Ron's eyes. Now, he had 2 objectives. Continue to train his body. Increase his vitality. Sharpen his swordsmanship. Reach the 4th stage as soon as possible. While Ron was lying awake, setting his training goals, Kuina was in another room in the dojo, speaking with Koshiro. Father, that sword Ron is holding, it's not ordinary, is it? She asked curiously. So, you noticed it too? Koshiro nodded. Indeed, that sword is not ordinary. It hasn't been seen in the world for centuries. That sword, what exactly is it? Kuina asked. It's like your Wado Ikimonji. It's one of the great swords, called Raikiri. Legend has it that its edge can tear through thunder itself. Koshiro's words left Kuina wide-eyed in shock. The winter passed quickly. Before long, spring arrived. Ron had spent 3 months in the dojo. His body had grown taller, now almost the same height as 10-year-old Kuina. His frame was strong and well-proportioned, full of vitality and energy. As Koshiro would say, a body to be envious of a monster's physique. 424, 425, 426. Ron was doing one-handed push-ups with 3 fingers in the backyard, sweat dripping from the tip of his nose. Ron, Koshiro called out as he walked down the corridor. Have you seen Kuina? She went to practice her swordsmanship by the waterfall, I think, Ron replied. Why do you ask, master? Nothing urgent, just some new students in the dojo. I thought I'd ask her to help teach them, Koshiro said. Ron thought for a moment, pressed down with his fingers, stood up, and looked at him. How about I go instead? You'd be a great help. Koshiro said happily. Ron followed Koshiro to the front yard of the dojo, where a group of kids around 7 or 8 years old were making a lot of noise. Some had already picked up bamboo swords and were fooling around. Koshiro cleared his throat. The kids who noticed him immediately quieted down, shouting in unison, "Hello, master!" The rest of the kids looked on curiously. "Hello, everyone," Koshiro said with a smile. "Some of you are new disciples. Welcome to Ishin Dojo. I'm the master here, Koshiro Shitmotsuki. In this place, I'll teach you swordsmanship and train you to become steadfast swordsmen." While Koshiro introduced the dojo to the new students, a few children curiously looked at Ron standing beside him. After finishing his introduction, Koshiro smiled at the children and said, "Now, Ron will be your sparring partner." Ron stepped forward with his bamboo sword. His eyes scanned the children, but he didn't see the green-haired kid. Hasn't he arrived yet, he thought to himself. Huh? Isn't Kuina supposed to practice with us? One of the children, Umi, looked at Ron, sized him up, and asked with doubt in his voice, "Your name is Ron, right? I've been at this dojo for 2 years. How long have you been here?" "About 3 months, Ron replied. "What? Only 3 months?" Umi exclaimed, his mouth wide open in disbelief. Then he grinned. "You've only been here 3 months, and you think you can spar with me?" The other children also looked at Ron with skepticism. Ron remained calm. "Tell you what, Umi," Koshiro smiled and said, "you like my real sword, don't you? If you can force Ron to take 1 step back during the sparring, I'll give you that sword." "Really?" Umi's face lit up with excitement. After seeing Koshiro nod with a smile, he eagerly turned to Ron and said, "All right, let's do this." Inside the dojo, Koshiro and the children knelt on the floor, watching Ron and Umi standing in the center, each holding a bamboo sword. As Umi looked at Ron's calm expression, he suddenly felt nervous, sweat forming in his palms. He shook his head to refocus. "It's just 1 step back, right? There's no way this new guy is as strong as Kuina." Pumping himself up, he charged at Ron with a loud shout, raising his bamboo sword high. In the next instant smack! Umi's sword was knocked out of his hand, and his entire body was sent flying backward, crashing heavily onto the floor. Lying there, Umi stared blankly at the ceiling, completely bewildered. What just happened? What hit me? How did I get thrown across the room? The surrounding children were also stunned. What just happened? Did he even strike? No, I couldn't see it at all. Koshiro took a sip of tea, smiling inwardly as he thought, so clean and precise. What a beautiful strike! Come to think of it, has his speed increased? It's not over yet. Umi shouted, refusing to accept defeat. He grabbed his bamboo sword and charged at Ron again. Smack! Ouch! It's not over. Smack. A few moments later, Umi lay sprawled out on the ground, bruised and defeated, with an expression of utter despair. How is he this strong? The other children, looking at Ron, who hadn't even broken a sweat, were filled with awe. I'm heading back, Ron said to Koshiro. Koshiro smiled and nodded. As soon as Ron left, Umi jumped up and rushed to Koshiro. Master! Did that guy really only join 3 months ago? Yes, Koshiro replied. How old is he? I believe he's 9 this year, a year younger than Kuina, Koshiro answered after thinking for a moment. Same age as me. Umi muttered in despair. Haha, don't be so down, Koshiro laughed, getting to his feet. Even Kuina isn't a match for him. Umi froze. Then, in shock, he exclaimed, what? Even Kuina can't beat him. His jaw nearly dropped to the floor. That's right. When he first arrived, Kuina lost to him in 2 strikes. Even though she's gotten much stronger, I'd say she can barely withstand 1 or 2 of his moves now. Koshiro sipped his tea. Nanny. Umi and the other children were so stunned they could barely speak. No way. Kuina, who can even defeat adults, can't beat him. Who is this guy? After seeing Kuina challenge Ron with their own eyes and getting disarmed in 2 strikes, the children were thoroughly convinced. From that day on, the nickname Monster Ron quickly spread among the children as their private name for him.